Hi, Nigel here with the Drivewire, and this is the 2022 Audi e-tron GT. Now, Audi's made a point of making their EVs look and feel like the sports sedans that we know and love. So today I'm going to find out if this e-tron GT is as satisfying as Audi's best gas-powered sports sedans in terms of performance and feel. So the Audi e-tron GT is basically a Porsche Taycan 4S. It shares its platform, it shares the 2-speed transmission, and it shares the battery pack from that car. And of course, in my opinion, it is way better looking. So I like the design elements of this car from pretty much all angles. It sort of follows the design elements of the S7, RS7, etc. Obviously, you've got the Audi 4 rings. Below here you've got this sort of like section where you've got various different sensors, and then this is all filled in because obviously there's no requirement for a radiator or any kind of air cooling. And I like these matrix LED headlights as well. So from the back it looks a little bit like, if you remember the old VW Passat CC, that sort of like curved sort of downward slope here, super cool sort of like one piece across the back light bar. It looks really good, a little bit Porsche-ish as well, but this is, in my opinion, a lot nicer than the Taycan. So this one has a few options, which is to be expected. Obviously, it's hard not to check boxes when you're buying any kind of car. This one has the performance pack, so that adds torque vectoring, rear wheel steering, and a lot of glossy black bits. This one also includes the $2,250 driver assistance package. It includes adaptive cruise control and active lane departure systems, taking the total price to a shade under $110,000. As part of that $6,000 performance package, you get these 20-inch wheels. Strangely, you get these Pirelli all-season tires, which I would have thought would have been summer, but that is not the case. So wear these down fast and buy yourself some Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's. Overall length, it's a shade over 16 feet long. It's about 6.5 feet wide, and it's quite low. So it's around 4.5 feet tall. So in the back, you get about 9.2 cubic feet of space. You get 110 or 120 volt charger and a 240 cable as well if you have the right socket in your house. And then under here, you lift this lid off, you get some additional space under there as well for stuff. So I think maybe if you play golf, you might be able to get some sticks in there. And then also, quite usefully, the rear seats do fold down and there's a poke through in the middle that you can poke longer items. The only downside is this is quite a narrow slot, so if you have a big suitcase, it's going to be a problem getting in there. So the good news is there's a little bit more space up front because there is a frunk, and I found the hidden button in the door here. They don't make it easy to find, so let's go open it. So the frunk is a pretty decent size. It holds about 1.8 cubic feet of stuff, which is very nice. The ID4, for example, does not allow you to do that. And then there's the standard exit in case you trap a really small person in there. Now, while we have this open, since there's no real engine to talk about, let me explain the 2-speed transmission. So it's used exclusively by Porsche and Audi, and it gives better acceleration and range, and then it can also disconnect the rear axle and run on the front axle only, which obviously makes it more efficient. And then shifts, typically, and we'll show you this when we drive it, the first shift from first to second, and that's it pretty much, is at 50 miles an hour. If you're in dynamic mode, then you will start off in first gear, but if you're not, if you're in regular mode, comfort mode, etc., it always starts off in second gear unless you mash the accelerator. So the e-tron GT has 2 permanent magnet motors, one on each axle, good for 522 horsepower and 472 foot-pounds of torque. Now that's the max allowable when you're under a launch mode conditions. If not, then it has about 50 horsepower less. Either way, it's still pretty fast. Audi said it'll do 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds. I've had it quicker than that. So what about range? Well, it's got a 93.4 kilowatt lithium ion battery with a real capacity of about 83.7. It's good for 238 miles of range. However, when I charge it on my level 2 charger at home, it always shows around 250 miles of range when I charge it to 100%. Obviously, normally you would charge these cars to 80 unless you were going on a long trip. It also regens really well, so I feel like it's probably fairly easy to achieve a little bit more than the 238 miles that the EPA suggests this car has. And one thing that is really cool about this car is it has charging ports at both sides. So the one on this driver's side is the standard level 2, and then the one on the passenger side is both level 2 and DC fast charging. So as you'd expect in a car with a very sloping roofline, a sort of a sedan that looks like a coupe type scenario, popular these days, I got my seat in my position here and I'm okay. A little bit upright, these seats don't move, they do fold flat, as I mentioned before, and then you do get the ability to poke large items through. So this whole centerpiece comes down. You can put long items through there, or you can just simply pull this one and get a couple of cup holders. Very nicely made. Obviously no seat here in the middle, AC, and no power at all in the back. This is more a car designed for front seat occupants, but you could definitely carry some smaller people in the back and be decently comfortable doing it. So the e-tron GT ditches the dual screen infotainment setup that you find in the regular e-tron SUV and some other Audi models, and basically it just uses this 10.1-inch screen right here, and then physical buttons right here for HVAC, etc. And I really like this setup. The actual infotainment screen itself is pretty slick and it's pretty easy to use. You can go in, you've got navigation, you can go into vehicle settings, you can check your charging and efficiency, you can see where you are as far as how much do you have. I have 85% of my charge left. My target is 100% because this is a test vehicle, so we don't really care about the battery that much, but if you were an owner, you would only charge it really to 80% max unless you're going on a long trip. So again, like the little clicks, there's some settings here where you can change things like the language, connected devices, users, general settings for, you know, things like date and time, version information, etc. It's really easy to use. Pairing a phone is quick, easy. Radio is easy to use, and then the navigation loads pretty quickly. It shows that we're pretty much in the middle of nowhere. So down below, HVAC is a doddle to use. As I said, there is no cooling for the seats, but that's fine. And then you've got your controls for your fan, auto. You've also got some controls for syncing the two sides. And then below here are the vents, which they're not the best position for vents. I prefer them slightly higher up, but at least they're away from the steering wheel. And then below that, you've got Drive Select. So Drive Select gives you a number of different modes. Just keep clicking on it. You got efficiency, you got comfort, you got dynamic, you got individual. And then you can click on individual and you can go for sporty drive, which I like. And then I've got the suspension set for comfortable, not sport. It's a little harsh in sport. If you want sport, I suggest you leave it and just go directly to dynamic. And in the center console, you've got your P for park, and then you've got reverse, neutral, and drive. You just toggle this selector back, stop start button. A little bit of space here, which I said is not quite big enough for your phone. And then down here, you've got a sort of a little volume control where you can slide your finger and change the volume. Two decent cup holders, and then a small amount of storage in here where I've got my cable because there's no Wi-Fi, the keys, and then a second garage door opener. So ahead of the driver is Audi's 12.3-inch virtual cockpit display, and in my opinion, it is one of the best on the market. You can configure it, you can change the views, you can add different stuff in the middle, maps here, maps there, and then go back. I have it set for date and time. The scroll wheel will say what your range is, which actually, I think I don't need to know what the day or time is. I'll just put range there, and that way I know, although there is a range indicator right here as well in the top left-hand side. This is your battery indicator, so obviously no tachometer in this car. Shows you when you're charging, and then battery levels here, and then obviously how much power you are using when you are pushing the go pedal. So yeah, you can't really fault the interior. Beautifully made. I like this piece of glass at the top. Obviously it doesn't open because I'm not a big fan of sunroofs, so that's a good thing. It helps to keep the sun out. I noticed that with the Tesla Model 3 that I had, it would get quite hot inside because of this glass, but this is actually keeping things moderately cool, so it's not too bad. Other than that, couple of little irritating things that I mentioned earlier. There's not a lot of storage space, there's no wireless charger, and this volume control is a bit iffy, and then anything other than a tiny phone won't really fit in there. But I could certainly live with that. Now, what we're going to do now is take it for a drive. So let's select dynamic mode. We've got 201 miles of range. So let's get going. It does make an interesting whirry noise, and it sounds a little bit car-like from the outside. And the 2-speed transmission is a little interesting as well when you drive it. So just driving along here, honestly, it's not short of acceleration. We're doing like 60, put our foot down, and it's already at 84. It's fast, no doubt. Now, obviously, if you wanted to, or you felt you had the need for more speed, then there's an RS version. Hopefully I can get my hands on one of those and we'll test that out. Driving wise, it drives like a big Audi. It's pretty smooth even in dynamic mode. It feels a little heavy compared to an RS7, or rather an S7, because this is comparable with an S7, although that has a little bit less power. This has more weight. But they're certainly on a par acceleration wise, but it scythes through these corners. I kind of wish it had some summer tires on it. It's got these pretty decent tires, but they're all seasons, which is not the best. And I'm sure I would be willing to sacrifice a little bit of range. God, pushes you in the back when you stick your foot down. I mean, you know, I never get bored with acceleration from an EV. It really is pretty good. But cornering wise as well, I like the way it corners. Doesn't feel like it's understeering, although I haven't really tried it on the limit yet. Of course, it does have this rear wheel steering system because it has the $6,000 performance pack. Steering is decently weighted. The only thing that is a little odd are the brakes. So when you're stopped in traffic and you're not quite putting your foot on the brake enough, you hear this weird noise as it tries to push forward. So it operates like a conventional automatic. There really is no one pedal driving with this car. Once you push hard on the brakes, they work pretty well. It's very quiet inside as well. And then push on the brakes here for this left-hand turn. You definitely feel the weight of this car, simply because it is heavy. But it's decently quick in the turns. And these tires are not complaining yet. Mash your foot. Jesus, this thing has got some power. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take long to get up to ridiculously high speeds. But a definite firm push on the brakes is required. And you can't really go into these turns too fast. I mean, pretty fast, I must say, but this is not like an RS3 or, you know, something that's got super sticky tires on that's meant, it's not really a sports car, it's more of a Grand Tourer. So far, the best handling electric car that I have driven, and that includes the Model 3. I feel like I'm going to switch it now to individual. That'll soften the suspension a little bit, which I think is going to be better for this road, but it'll keep me sporty in terms of the drivetrain. Alright, so we're going to come out of this turn here, and we're going to see what it'll do. We're going to stomp on it. and it just keeps gaining speed. And because it's so quiet inside, I'm also impressed with it hasn't made any squeaks or noises yet. Now I had this garage door opener switched around, and then I immediately heard this noise. I'm like, what the hell is that? This is impossible. An Audi can't be rattling, and then I realized I had to tuck it under the visor. So that was basically user error. So driving this at around, 7 or 8 tenths, very rewarding car to drive. Get on the edge, and it doesn't like it as much. And I think that's probably because it isn't meant to be a full-on sports car. You can't throw into the turns like that. Lexus RCF Fuji edition would be quicker along here just because of its better chassis balance. I'm not complaining though. This is an amazing car. Now we've been hammering along. We left with 202 miles of range. We've got 196. So it's been regenning most of the way, even though I've been sticking my foot down, then I take my foot off, and then it regens again. So it's a good system. It feels like you get more from it. It feels like it's more efficient. I know Tesla sort of lies a little bit about their EPA ranges, and I had one, so I know that Model 3 was like, it didn't get the range that it said on the label, whereas this is getting a lot closer to that 248. Would I be happy if it was closer to 348? Absolutely. But luckily I have a charger at home, so I could charge this car up. Yeah, it's quick. It's properly quick, this car. Obviously it doesn't feel the same as an S7. It doesn't have that emotion of a gas engine, which is kind of a shame, but this is the future here. Yeah, you can just power out of the turn, and it goes. Woo! Little front tire lift there, just felt it over that bump. But that's why I'm in this softer suspension setting, because I think it's better for here. All right, we're going to stop here, and we are going to engage the V-Box. Okay, so here it goes. Let's see what happens. Oh! That was quick. The machine says 3.9 seconds. So we matched the manufacturer's time, but I wanted to go quicker. I'm going to see if I can do one more here on this section here. Come to a halt. Wow, feel that harsh second into second gear. It's weird saying that. And I just snapped my leg off there and held it out for a little bit. And yeah, we've beaten that time. So we've got if I can see what it says, it is 3.8 seconds. So we're 1/10 quicker than the manufacturer's time. So if I had all day and plenty of battery, I think I might be able to get it down quicker than that. So what do we think? Well, there's no denying that this is an expensive car at $110,000. It is not going to be for the majority of folks out there, but it is fast becoming one of my favorite sports sedans of all time. It definitely is Audi's most compelling product. And if it's good enough for Tony Stark, then it's good enough for me. Once again, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Like, subscribe, and we'll catch you next time with another video.